Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and happy International Literacy Day. We're thrilled to have you joining us today for what I am sure is going to be an insightful and engaging discussion that's focused on the work of the Global Book Alliance, our progress to date, and also our new strategic plan, which we intend to use to create even greater impact going forward. My name is Brooke Estes. I'm Senior Advisor for the Global Book Alliance. Our mission at the Global Book Alliance is to transform the lives of children in developing countries by working with public, private, and civil society partners to identify, promote, and support innovations, best practice, and policies that will change the way that books are created, procured, provided, and used. I'm delighted to be joined today by my GBA colleagues from our flagship initiatives who are keenly engaged in understanding the global book supply chain, working to provide greater access to books through the Global Digital Library, supporting publishers through trainings and mentoring, and finally creating new challenges and innovations that ensure the right books are available at the right level, in the right language, in the right places for readers across the world. Next slide, please. I've been working with the Global Book Alliance since its inception in 2017, and I'm currently serving as the Senior Advisor for the Alliance's Secretariat. I'm delighted to be here today with my colleagues to talk and hear more about our work over the past 4 years and what we've learned from these efforts, and to have that opportunity to discuss our plans for the Global Book Alliance going forward based on our new strategic plan. At the Global Book Alliance, we believe that literacy is a basic right that empowers individuals and benefits society. The Alliance was founded to guarantee that children everywhere have the learning materials they need to learn to read by 2030. This ambitious vision, though, demands market-based transformation in book planning, development, production, procurement, distribution, and use, which is a complex and interconnected set of processes and actors that we call the book chain. Next slide, please. The GBA works to ensure that books and other teaching materials are procured, written, published, distributed, and used, ensuring that children can access developmentally appropriate books in languages they speak and understand. Through our flagship initiatives, including the Global Digital Library, National Book Supply Chain Analyses, the Begin with Books Award through the All Children Reading Grand Challenge, and support for publishers, the Global Book Alliance is working with partners to address the global shortage of high-quality children's books in underserved languages and to underserved populations. With focused work by collaborators, funders, partners, and other supporters, we are all part of the Alliance aiming to increase literacy rates, support a healthier book market, and ensure that children have access to books that pave the way for greater economic growth, health outcomes, democratic governance, peaceful and resilient societies. So I'm truly delighted today to host this conversation with my GBA colleagues who are doing this important work and who can share their knowledge, their learning, and their thoughts on all of this with us. Just wanted to give everyone a reminder that we do plan to have a question and answer session once we've heard from all of our speakers. So do feel free to send any questions during the event by clicking on the QA button and writing your question there. We won't be able to get to all of them, but we promise that we'll do our best. So first of all, I'm delighted to welcome Juliana Nielsen. She's the Senior Technical Advisor at the Global Book Alliance in Action, which is a USAID-supported initiative housed at Education Development Center. And it focuses on understanding and supporting the global book supply chain, the Global Digital Library, and publishers networks. Juliana has over 25 years of experience working in educational publishing in the United States. She has directed the development of print and digital materials for publishers such as Pearson Education, Houghton Mifflin, and McGraw-Hill. And for the past several years, she's worked on materials development and publisher training in Senegal for USAID and in Morocco for the European Union, before joining EDC as the Senior International Technical Advisor. Juliana has an MA in International Relations from the Fletcher School and an MA in French from Middlebury College. She'll provide us with some key insights into the first 2 of the GBA's book supply chain analyses, which have been undertaken by the Global Book Alliance in Malawi and in Zambia. Over to you, Juliana.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you. And thank you to our audience for taking the time to be with us. The book supply chain analyses, which are basically a survey of the entire book sector in a given country, which looks at all the links that Brooke just displayed on the screen, have been carried out so far in Cambodia, Jordan, Malawi, and Zambia. And we're currently working on Tanzania and Nigeria. Next slide, please. So although we're using the language of science, supply chain analyses, and the methodology of science, throughout our research, we keep in mind the faces of the children that you see on this screen. They are our motivation and really the reason for the Global Book Alliance's existence. So the book sector in each country that we study, of course, has its own challenges and barriers. During our analyses, we try to remain focused on essential reading materials, including general children's books. As discussed by Brooke, our primary goal is to ensure that children have access to these critical books in languages that they can understand. Because, however, in every country that we work in and look at, the official procurement process of books by ministries of education tends to be of textbooks only. So we look closely at the book supply chain for textbooks. Our intention is to open up new pathways in the book chain for essential reading materials, children's books, and others. So there's a clear advocacy piece that runs through our work. We're encouraging new and innovative thinking to try and open up systems and transform them in order to get more books to children so that they can learn to read. So throughout our work of these analyses, the aim of increasing literacy is what guides us and these gorgeous faces. Our primary research methodology is qualitative through key stakeholder interviews in each country. Important stakeholders consulted include members of the ministries of education, publishers, printers, distributors, school leaders and teachers, community members, and donors and NGOs. Interviews with the stakeholders are tractable and conducted in a manner that encourages probing and further inquiry. Next slide, please. So this graphic depicts the book chain that you saw earlier with the various stages from planning and forecasting through title development, publishing and printing, procurement and purchasing, distribution management, and active use, which are all look like they run in a circle, but in fact are overlapping and sometimes go backwards. So this graphic is intended to show the breaks in the chains, showing where who the actors are in any particular link in the chain and where the breaks are. So for the two that we have finalized and are published on the website, Malawi was the first one. Most of the issues in Malawi stem from the fact that the government of Malawi has only a budget for textbooks. There is no planning, forecasting, or budgeting for children's books or essential reading materials. In addition, there's a lack of market demand. Most low-income households cannot afford a book. So this means that with no market, publishers cannot afford to publish these books, and schools and libraries have a very limited supply for their children. Next slide, please. In Zambia, similarly, there is no official planning or budgeting for children's books and essential reading materials. Publishers tend to be very underfunded and report delays in payment from the government of up to 4 years, which leaves them seriously undercapitalized. Like in Malawi, donors and NGOs do step in to fund some of these children's materials and other children's learning materials and readers, but their efforts are not coordinated, and therefore the funding is not consistent enough to fuel a healthy book sector system. In both of these countries, the results of the study have been reported back to the ministries of education and other stakeholders who have responded with great enthusiasm. In Malawi, we are just now beginning an intervention which will allow all stakeholders to confer and create a national book policy to address the issues that we raised in our supply chain analysis. We'll also be conducting trainings for publishers and conducting a literacy advocacy campaign in communities across Malawi. And in Zambia, we hope to start similar work soon. Next slide, please. So please stay tuned for another open book webinar in October, when we will give a full readout of our recent research in Zambia and Malawi to celebrate the publishing of these 2 reports. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Juliana. I think that was really valuable to hear your insights on the work that's been done thus far. Our next speaker is Christer Gundersen. He's the Chief Technical Officer for the Global Digital Library, which is a NORAD-supported open source library developed to increase the availability of high-quality reading resources in languages that children use and understand. Christer works as a senior advisor at the Norwegian Agency for Development. He is for development cooperation. He's a developer and technology enthusiast who is working to unlock the full potential of the internet by promoting a free and open web. The vision for the future is a version of the internet where everyone can participate safely. As CTO for the Global Digital Library, he's led the design and development of large-scale platforms using DevOps, lean methodology, and autonomous teams. As a product design lead for the Global Digital Library, he leads human-centered design processes through conversation, observation, and co-creation with children and youth from 7 countries in Africa and Asia. Christer is also currently serving as the chapter lead for Creative Commons in Norway. He'll provide some updates on the Global Digital Library, their work with partners, and some new initiatives that they're currently undertaking. Over to you, Christer.
Thank you, Brooke, and thank you all for both inviting me here and for all of you that have taken the time to participate in this webinar. What I'm thinking about doing right now is giving you guys a short update on the Global Digital Library, and then dropping into 2 cases that are currently unfolding in 2 different countries, just to give you a very concrete sense of what we've been doing as COVID has developed, and also driven by COVID. We've developed our methodology in a slightly different direction than what we've seen over the last few years. Next. As you all probably know, if you follow the Global Digital Library, we're focusing on children that are early grade readers, right? And focusing on providing content that they can use in their setting on their terms. Next. The focus and scope of early grade reading has been with us from the start. I raised this specifically because what we're looking at now is that we might consider also adding more content that is not directly focused on early grade reading. So at this point, if you go into the Global Digital Library, you will see early math resources appearing as part of the portfolio for some of the languages. So up until now, early grade reading has been our sole focus, but based on feedback from countries that we collaborate with, we first started gently adding mathematical games and interactions to the books that we have that are sort of early grade reading books with math topics. But we are now looking at the options of adding more comprehensive portfolios of early math resources. And that's based on user feedback and on the mere fact that both teachers and children in that age are looking to do both numeracy and literacy. Next. And of course, for us, we have a quality focus, meaning we've drawn content from many magnificent resources, other platforms around, but we have kept focus on quality and kept focus on underserved languages. Also worth noticing is that there are some languages now popping up on the platform recently that are not underserved. So for instance, German, we have that now on the platform. We have a few Russian resources. We're just going live with that. So our focus is still underserved languages, but we are also now experiencing increased demand from underserved communities in countries that are both in Europe and other places. Next. We're currently at 85 languages. And this, I would say, just 85 languages because we have a content pool that stretches at least to 250 languages. And the reason for us keeping it at this pace is quality. But we're proud to say that these content pools are drawn from sources with high quality. It's the US government, All Children Reading, African Storybook, Pratham Story Weaver, and so forth. And we're still adding content and languages as we move. Right now, it looks like we're going to pass 100 languages by the end of this year, including a number of new sign languages. Next. It's not a new, so this new literacy game is not a new literacy game, but what we've done is we've added Feed the Monster, which is a literacy game for the Android platform, and linked that up to all the relevant languages that we have on the platform. Currently, we provide, in a collaboration with Curious Learning, a fantastic partner that we have been working on together with for many years, we provide this self-driven literacy app now in 51 languages that are confirmed, which is sort of the bridge from an emergent reader and onto the GDL platform. Next. So to the activities that I mentioned, we're currently doing a few new things that we haven't done in the same extent before, and that is working directly with governments to have them work on our platform. So we house them on our platform with their teams, and we also collaborate, especially with UNESCO and UNICEF, to engage these countries directly. And those that are marked with stars are countries where we are already moving, and those that are not are underway. And this is shifting quickly. So for instance, Nigeria is not marked here, but that is something that is already happening and has changed since these slides arose. I'll also bring out Nigeria as an example. Next. And this is where I think it sort of turns out pretty magical for us, especially when we look back at how the situation was when we started out this project in 2017 and 2018. We had a meeting with the Bangladesh government 9 months ago. And the idea was that they wanted to get content into new languages, so Shakma, Kukburuk, and Sadri, and so forth. And they needed it quickly because of the COVID situation. And when we started looking at what we had in English, we had 450 vetted resources at an estimated development cost of $1.5 million. So in that project, we didn't even come in with any funding from our side. We simply met with the government. They engaged 130 youth in a crowdsourcing effort, and they had linguistics experts quality assure that. And within a few weeks, they had translated content in the languages and were ready to launch. And of course, what is groundbreaking about this is, one, the collaborative effort amongst the projects that have provided high quality content to us, and two, the quality assurance that we have done on top in terms of, for instance, accessibility and universal design and platform agnostic implementation, and the fact that that investment can be used directly by others at a very rapid implementation speed, with no contracts, no formalities, just you do the job, and you have the resources. And in that way, Bangladesh is in many ways the pathfinding country for us at the GDL for the future of our project. Next. Nigeria is slightly different. So Nigeria has a different platform. They have a different project with UNICEF already rolling from their side. What they needed was new content and games. So they came to us and we gave them access to our API, it's called. It's a technical sort of backdoor into the content portfolio. And during just a few weeks this summer, they have drawn 400 plus books, including games in a variety of different languages. And just to sort of underline this is content assembled on the GDL with different sources and different contributors that within a few working days can be drawn over to a different platform, the Learning Passport platform, in a collaboration with Microsoft, UNICEF, and the Nigerian government. And this is done without any contracts, without any negotiation, and without any seed funding from our side. And for me, this is sort of these two projects. They show the way. They're pathfinding projects for the community around early grade reading, and I would say also the community around early math for the future steps of our journey in the GDL and the GBA. And of course, it's been vital to us to have the Global Book Alliance as sort of the quarterback on our team to coordinate and to provide us with different venues, and of course, very, very crucial for also providing us with content. So I guess that's my short talk of today, which really inspired from Noor's side on what we've sort of accomplished together as a collaborative. And we're really looking forward to what the future holds for both early grade reading and as I mentioned, for early math.
Thanks so much, Krister. We're all really excited about the work of the GDL and both the progress it's made so far and where it's going. So next up, we have another EDC colleague who's working with the publishing community. So this is Christina Inchugan-Sonu, who is a senior international project director focused on the development of publishers trainings, with the first one set to take place next week in Mali. Christina is an educational development professional with over 20 years of experience in educational management and project implementation in West and North Africa and the Middle East. She served as the chief of party for 4 USAID projects in 3 African countries and is currently the Washington, D.C. based project director for several primary education and youth workforce development projects. Christina has extensive experience managing complex educational reform initiatives and working with NGO partners in conflict settings. Her career portfolio comprises a range of projects, including curriculum and teacher training reform, accelerated education, as well as programs focused on strengthening early grade reading, integrating gender equity and life skills within formal and non-formal education settings, and promoting youth-led solutions to school dropout. She's supervised small-scale grant initiatives and school infrastructure improvements and is experienced in building governmental capacities for distance education and overseeing monitoring and evaluation. As a project leader, she seeks to bring out the best in diverse project teams. She's fluent in English and French, and she holds a doctorate in philosophy in educational studies from Oxford. So Christina, I'll hand it over to you to tell us more about the work that's being undertaken to support publishers in Mali and other countries, and provide insights about the trainings to come and the impact that we're hoping to gain for the global book chain through those.
Great, thank you so much, Brooke. And it was wonderful to hear from Juliana as well as Krister on these international views, and especially to hear from Juliana about some of the things that are very specific to the challenges that we have in Mali as well. So I just wanted to give you a bit more of a, this is what's happening on the ground aspect after building on these really helpful background initiatives. The Malian context is, we're very fortunate in that there has actually been quite a good amount of work specifically done with Canadian assistance to train the publishing sector there. And so we are starting from a good place where there is already capacity within the publishing sector and within the ministry. And we're also very lucky to have sort of a dream team working on this Malian project. So the stakeholders for the work that we're currently doing, and as was mentioned, we actually have a workshop programmed for next week with the Malian publishing sector. So we are working very closely with the Ministry of National Education as well as the Ministry of Culture. And there is a group of Malian publishers that also has been very central to the way that we want to make this activity adapted to the needs on the ground. And of course, since we're focused on one of the local languages, Bamanakan, often known as Bambara, we are working with as well the local languages or the national languages directorate within the ministry area. So those are the groups that we're working with. Next slide. And as we try, really, I think we're very focused on adapting our overall visions to the realities on the ground. We do have to recognize the challenges, even though there is a good base on which to build. And that is that, as Juliana was mentioning, the actual market of people who buy books in Mali is extremely limited. And in fact, in many ways, most parents or families that would be interested in buying books are those whose kids are very likely going to private schools in which they don't teach in the local languages, but they teach in French. And therefore, those things that there's a market for are much more focused on the French language market. So building and working with publishers to encourage them to publish in local languages is a challenge in and of itself. Interestingly, there are a large number there. We have contacted and will be including 27 publishing houses next week in our publishers training. And at the same time, some of them are very small, some are larger, and they do have a lot of capacity. There is a book industry in Mali, but it's very young, it's very underfunded, and we have to make sure not to stifle it and to encourage this private sector industry that does exist. Currently, as I was saying, the French is still very important in Mali, and even though there have been initiatives, one of which is a USAID funded project that has worked over the past 5 years to train teachers and make sure that local language early grade reading materials are available. This is a challenge for the country overall in having local languages, national languages, be the way in which children are learning to read. This is still a challenge in Mali, but they're working toward it. Within that project, there has been the development of decodable texts and leveled readers, and these are the things that we are going to be working with the publishers on next week. So next slide, please. The goals of the activity for next week are to build the capacity of the publishing houses. As I mentioned, many of them have had a very solid foundation on standard book publishing, but to really orient that toward the primary grades, the essential reading materials for Bamanakan in specific. We want to consolidate the skills in the production of those leveled readers, which is what we will be actually working with them after the workshop, doing a coaching series of activities in order to be able to publish 18 short leveled readers focused on grades 1 through 4. And these, of course, in keeping with all USAID focused initiatives, they will include gender sensitivity and inclusion as bases of producing these readers for the children. The long-term goal, of course, is to increase children's access to quality reading materials. As Krista was saying, and as the entire Global Book Alliance is working on, and we're all focused on just making more materials available and interesting for children. Next slide, please. So what are we going to be doing next week? And we're going to be building on the international best practices. And we have worked very closely, once again, with this Malian team on the ground, which has been consulting regularly with the ministry, with the Malian publishing group, with the others who are involved in doing book publishing. So there will be there's an overview of the Malian context, and then even just talking about how these essential learning materials and essential reading materials, how we can develop them so that they are interesting and meaningful and adapted to the environment. We have invited our colleagues from SILLEAD, and they will be introducing how the Bloom software, with which many of you are familiar, how that can be used as an authoring tool for the publishing group houses. And then the idea of reading for pleasure. And as was mentioned, many of the book chains that exist are very focused on textbooks. And so developing books that are reading books that are fun for kids to read and interesting for them. This is an orientation that we really want to focus on. As mentioned previously, we will certainly be keeping our eye when the books are being developed on gender issues and inclusion of any children with various disabilities. So this goal that we have set and that we've been working with our USAID colleagues on is to develop and publish 18 titles. It might even be flexible, more or less, depending on the resources we end up with. And going ahead and after they're published, going ahead and end printing 10,000 copies of each so that we can distribute them, get them out to the school communities in which the students who have actually been learning to read and write in Bamanakan, so that they will have access to these books and they can become a more dynamic part of the reading environments, the materials that they have available to them. So following the workshop next week, we will be recruiting the various publishing houses that will be working on developing these 18 titles and coaching them and continuing to work with them as we publish and produce these readers. Next slide, please. So that would be great. I thank you very much, and I hope that we will be letting you know about the exciting activities from next week's book publishing workshop. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. I think that was a really valuable presentation, and wanted to note that we're grateful to be able to build this training off of previous work that was initiated by our partner IDEA in terms of engaging with publishers, as well as a pilot that USAID funded a couple of years ago, and models that we have from partners like the World Bank, who funded the Reach for Reading grants. So it's building on a lot of previous work, and we're really excited about this work in Mali. Next, we'll talk a bit about the Begin With Books Prize, which is a global prize competition to source books in languages children use and understand. Sergio Ramirez Mena is the Chief of Party at All Children Reading, which leads the work on this GBA flagship initiative. Sergio has over 25 years of experience in international development, leading contracts for the US government, multilaterals, and a large public-private partnership in education. He previously worked in the field for 9 years as Chief of Party for USAID's Honduras reading activity, the Acceler Early Grade Reading and Education Project in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the Step Up Zambia Education Project. He has over 25 years of experience in international development, leading contracts for the US government, multilaterals, and large public-private partnerships in education. And his technical background is in education management and information systems, ICT for development, data visualization, and education performance and management applications in Latin America and Africa. Sergio has a master's degree in program management from George Washington University and is originally from Monterrey, Mexico. He is fluent in English, Spanish, and French, and speaks basic Dutch. And he has practical knowledge of some other African languages. So Sergio will speak about the latest challenges being developed by Begin With Books, as well as the success of the initiative to date. Sergio, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Brooke and Kate, for the invitation. And so pleased to see Juliana, Krista, Christina, our colleagues from Gabaya. As I said, I'm very pleased to present today one of the 3 awards that competitions that are currently active within the All Children Reading Grand Challenge. As you know, our Grand Challenges are not long-term projects, but they are short-term infusion of funding for innovators and to bring forth ideas in this case, with respect to reading. In the case of Begin with Books, if you can go to the next slide, please. One of the issues that the partners, All Children Reading, as you said, so USA, the Australian government, and World Vision identified is that there, as we are here in this event, know that there is still a very severe shortage, especially in underserved languages, and even more severe for accessible, especially accessible and contextualized storybooks. And I think as Christina was saying, there's always this need for more supply, especially with the COVID, as we face the learning crisis, because COVID pandemic has become a learning crisis, an education pandemic. The latest results that we have seen is that many children have gone back a year or two in their reading abilities. So for us at All Children Reading, and specifically under the Begin with Books competition, we are trying to bring forth our contribution to this effort. As you say, as we all know, and this is why we're all here connected, is that all children need a language of foundation, especially those, in our case, especially those that use sign language, because they are the ones of the vulnerable children, probably the most vulnerable and less communicated, the most isolated, especially during this COVID. So one of the, as much as we are working to develop through e-publications for the written books, a heavy emphasis of Begin with Books is also producing sign language books. Next slide, please. So specifically, Begin with Books is, as I said, is making books accessible in the local and sign languages. The competitions, as in most of these grand challenges, competitions are 18 months approximately. This one, Begin with Books, is one of the three under what we call round 3 of the All Children Reading Grand Challenge. And it's halfway through its process. We have four awardees, 4 subgrants working precisely on this in the areas, as we said, in Africa. We are working in Malawi. With our partners in Malawi, in Mali and Somalia. In Asia, we're working in Nepal, Laos, and Indonesia, and the Philippines. And and thanks to the support from the Australian government, we also have a focus in what is the Pacific region, which Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and Samoa. One of the things we always stress is that as we're building in each one of these countries, we work with the organizations for children with disabilities, so disabled people. And these organizations are one of the, beyond just building the books or delivering the books, we want to make sure that local capacity is built once the grand challenge ends, and or those local organizations can become self-sustaining, or can at least get a boost as they continue seeking other funding sources to support the follow-on on development of these books, especially sign language books. Next, please. So what do we do with it? How does Begin with Books address it? Well, in our goal is pretty ambitious, the creation of over 2,000 storybooks in 19 underserved languages. At this point, we are glad to say that we have moved ahead with about half of that amount, but we're still developing. It's a process that takes several months. But basically what we do under Begin with Books, and with the help with the support, or in the collaboration with the sub-grantees, the awardees, is 3 big steps. One is the development adaptation. Second is quality assurance, which is very important. I think Krista mentioned that, and that's very important, and dissemination. Within the development of or adaptation, each awardee establishes a list of books. So we have a list of these books, or the stories that they're going to adapt, or develop new ones with contextually relevant content and graphics, meaning that, as most of you will understand, is we want these books to reflect the reality of the child in his or her local context. The graphics, the pictures, as well as the content has to be in relation to, you know, what they're doing in Mali, what they're doing in Nepal, what they're doing in Malawi, et cetera, et cetera. So we make sure that there's a relative, they see it as a mirror. Those books are a mirror of the child's own reality. Each ORD has its own in-country teams that adapt its books to the local language, or even more importantly, to local sign languages. Just as there is spoken languages, each country has their own version of sign languages, and it's quite a complex process as well, and very, very important, especially for those children who cannot read, see, or hear. Last but not least, is award is in collaboration with local organization of disabled people, translators, or local educators prepare these ebooks in an EPUB version, a PDF version, and in the case of the sign language book, with accessible versions for deaf and blind, meaning that these books are accompanied with a video in the case of sign language, or audio in the case of those for blind. The quality assurance is a very important process as well, because we want to make sure that, you know, these books meet the latest standards in the work we do. One of them is not only do the competitors, the awardees, have to conduct their own local quality assurance to make sure that the context, that is gender balanced, that the content is relatively level to the local, to the children that they're serving, but also within All Children Reading, we also have our own checks and balances to verify that they follow those UDL principles, as well as the standards for web publishing. One of the things we verify is that the functionality, if it has the metadata, those files contain the metadata, the quality of the video is the proper way, if the content and it's all ready for content for digital publishing. Finally, we want to make sure that the metadata is correct, so that when it's uploaded or on the web, on the internet, that it can be searchable through on the web. Finally, dissemination. Once these books are finalized and we are verified and approved, vetted correctly, they are submitted to our colleagues with the GBA project, which we appreciate very much their support, so that they can be uploaded to the Global Digital Library, which Crystal mentioned before. Part of our process is we'll be monitoring the use of these materials in each one of the countries where these languages are used. And beyond that, one of the things we plan to do in this year, particularly now, is keep expanding the promotion of the usage through our ACR partners, the 3 founding partners, but other organizations. Glad to hear also about all these book publishing workshops. We'll be glad to hear more about that, and other network where we can make sure that these that the books reach the man. The challenge has always been the last mile, getting the children to read, and especially those with disabilities. Last, please. So what we have accomplished, I think, is 3 basic things. It's we have been promoting, and especially like this kind of events, promoting the uptake. An essential component of it is to create local market demand that requires that creation of high quality books. People will be attracted with the books if parents, students, but even teachers in schools will be attracted to using the books if they find them useful, if they find them relevant and at the level that they can be used. And second is creating a community, is building capacity of our awardees, but also the local organizations, especially in the 9 countries, through this exercise we call a cohort, where people adapt and create and share their knowledge, especially on how we're implementing the universal design for learning principles and adaptation with standards for WCAG, and other areas. So that because what we know is that that the books that have the most use are those that meet the highest standards. And then as we move in this process, we provide that opportunity for that discussion. Last but not least, one of the things that I'm very, very happy is to hear with HCR is this, what we're creating the minimum and gold standard for sign language books, based on the research we have been conducting with our partners, with our sub-grantees, to make sure that across the board, the books that are produced for the kids, for children with disabilities, meet those requirements, that they have those the level of quality necessary and functionality so that they can be collected. It's sort of one of the things we'll be presenting soon, and not just to this, is presenting how this manual, how-to manual and training modules to ensure that future sign language books are not only done in the way that it's truly used by children, but also focuses on the families of these children, so that they're most accessible and in the smallest file, or the smallest compressed file, so that it can be transmitted over the internet. That is my contribution for today. I'm really happy to be on International Literacy Day. Finally, I did want to conclude by saying that we just announced the last, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Next slide. So thank you very much. I just wanted to also add that we have just announced the 3 awardees of our latest competition called Ready to Read. That besides Begin with Books and Unrestricted, which are the other 2 active competitions now, we started last month, we signed 3 new awards for Ready to Read, which is foundational literacy, focused on the similar theme of providing more books for children in pre-primary, preschool age, 4 to 6 years of age, in order for them to be ready, ready to learn, ready to read, so they can read to learn. So please look at our website and for the latest information on this new award, Ready to Read. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sergio. We are really excited about both Begin with Books and the broader work that All Children Reading Grand Challenges are doing. So finally, I'm delighted to welcome GBA's interim chair of our steering committee, Scott Walter, who's also the executive director of CODE, a Canadian organization that works to ensure the joy of reading and learning across sub-Saharan Africa. In 2007, Scott was appointed as the executive director of CODE, which was founded in 1959, focused on development through education. He came to CODE from the Canadian International Development Agency, where as principal advisor for education, he provided leadership to the Government of Canada on education issues and international development. This included Canada's involvement in the multilateral level in the Global Education Fast Track Initiative and the Canadian Global Campaign for Education. Before joining the Canadian International Development Agency, Scott was the former director of international development at the International Reading Association based in Washington, D.C., where he was responsible for programs and advocacy under global literacy development, spearheading such initiatives as the Reading and Writing for Critical Thinking Network of Educators and the Pan-African Reading for All conferences. In November 2020, we were lucky to have him named the deputy chair of the Global Book Alliance. And where great books come from and how to sustainably support their availability, access, and use has long been a focus of Scott's work. As the leader of the GBA's steering committee, Scott will provide a briefing on the GBA's new strategic plan and our focused objectives and planned activities over the next few years. Scott, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Brooke. I know we're running a bit late here, so I'll try to keep it moving, but I'm really pleased to be here to represent the GBA Steering Committee to introduce our new strategic plan, especially today on International Literacy Day, which is really our global celebration of literacy as the very cornerstone of development. So as Brooke had stated, the Alliance remains committed to a vision of a world in which all children are achieving literacy and have access to quality books in a language that they understand and with which they can learn to read, read to learn, and develop the love and habit of reading. The clear role for the Alliance in this regard is to bring partners together to support learning and improve practices related to the book supply chain. To that end, our mission remains one of transforming the lives of children in developing countries by working with partners to identify, promote, and support innovations, best practice, and policies that will change the way that books are created, procured, provided, and used. Next slide, please. I think I'll actually run through this one very, very quickly. These are the initiatives that Juliana, Krister, Sergio, and Christina spoke to. So just to say that these have really formed the focus of our first strategic plan and continue into the second. Next slide, please. But we couldn't have done this without a very strong partnership. In fact, an alliance. And it's built on collaboration across partners rather than on a pooled fund. And you can see our steering committee is quite impressive, as you see here. The partnership has guided our thinking in the sector by focusing in on three key roles that the Alliance can play most effectively to advance access to high quality children's reading materials. First, the Alliance partners play a key role in communicating the problem of the global book gap and advocating to the global community for the uptake of practices that help to solve the problem in a sustainable way. Our work on supply chains in the book industry and events like this webinar help with that. Second, the Alliance supports the collection and dissemination of resources and promising practices, learning from innovative work being carried out by partners around the world. Our work with the publishing industry is a case in point here. And third, the Alliance will continue to manage the production of global public goods related to the book supply chain. For example, we'll continue to support the growth of the Global Digital Library, and we'll complete the development of a book supply chain strengthening toolkit with resources and tools to support anyone working in this space. We're impatient to do more, to do it more efficiently and effectively. To that end, we've worked through a participatory process to reflect on the first years of the Alliance's work, and we've gained significant input from across our steering committee member organizations and beyond as to what we need to do next. Next slide, please. So to highlight what the Alliance and our partners will be working on going forward, and importantly, as an invitation for everyone to join us, here are the 4 key objectives of the strategic plan, and a few examples of how we can bring them to life, noting that these are still ideas and in discussion by our wider committee. So objective number 1, focused on availability, increasing availability of quality children's books in local languages, in both print and digital formats. And as one activity, to further the development of thematic and leveled collections of original and translated early grade reading materials for distribution on the Global Digital Library. Objective 2, focused on access, increasing access to quality children's books at school, in the community, and at home. And as one activity, to convene a community of practice to create guidance and toolkits that support the development of essential reading materials that are both accessible and inclusive. Objective 3, focused on use, improving the use of books by children, teachers, parents, and caregivers, and as a possible activity to increase book usage by promoting a better understanding by teachers of the processes of learning to read and teaching to read. And objective 4, focused on knowledge and capacity of all stakeholders to strengthen book supply chains and close the global book gap. and is one activity to finalize a book supply chain analysis toolkit and disseminate it as a global public good. Next slide, please. So that's just a very quick insight into our plans. As mentioned, we'd love you to join us and to help bring them to life. And to do that, there are any number of ways, including signing up to be a GBA member on our website and committing to our vision, sharing your knowledge, your materials, your insights with us, either on the Global Digital Library, through our website, or through events like this. Downloading and using the materials on the GDL, and equally to provide new materials to share on the GDL, the Global Digital Library. Learning more about the book supply chain and where you can play a role. Connecting us with others who could also support. And making use of our global public goods like the supply chain toolkit. And finally, talking about the work we all do and the importance of literacy and books for children around the world. So thank you for engaging with us today, International Literacy Day, and we look forward to working with you. Back to you, Brooke.
Thank you so much, Scott, and thank you for your great investments as we've developed this strategy and your leadership of the steering committee throughout this process. So fortunately, we have had so much interesting discussion that I think we will not have time to answer the questions today during the session, but we promise that we'll follow up afterwards and try to get you responses to those. We're grateful to all of the speakers today who've been able to share really valuable insights into the work that the Alliance has done so far, the direction that we're planning to go, and an invitation to all of you to join us and work with us in this in these efforts. So please do, as you see on your screen, join us for our next Open Book Series event in October. You can sign up at our website, and this will be focused primarily on the book supply chain analyses. So it'll be a deeper dive into the ones that have been done thus far. And please do keep an eye out for our full strategy to be released shortly so that you can have the full picture of the efforts that Scott was describing in his discussion. So thanks again, and have a wonderful Literacy Day.